One-on-One with Jane Mitchell, featuring the legends.
Dick Enberg has traveled the sphere of sports for 60 years. He is a legend in sports broadcasting. His recognizable voice linked to football, basketball, tennis, and more. In 2010, he returned to his first love, baseball, as the San Diego Padres television broadcaster. Calling games in a city he's long called home could have been the topper to his stellar career until a phone call one December morning in 2014.
When I received the call from Mr. Idelson at the Cooperstown Hall of Fame to announce that I had been selected this year, it literally took me to my knees. And it was as if somebody had turned on a switch and taken me all the way back as far as I could remember and what baseball has meant to me, my family.
Named the 2015 Ford C. Frick Award winner for excellence in broadcasting.
Ditbar throws. Here's a swing and a high fly ball going deep to left. They do it.
He is the award's 39th recipient and will forever have a place in the broadcast wing of the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Joining the best baseball broadcasters of all time, those from whom I learned to report the game, going back to the very first two inducted were Red Barber and Mel Allen. And in my black and white radio days, living on a farm in Michigan, those were the voices that we copied as we played ball. It's the culmination of a very privileged career. Ground ball, one hop to Hosmer, the flip to the pitcher, in time for the out.
For Dick Enberg, calling a baseball game is not just what he does well, but it seems it's what he was meant to do.
I was teethed on a little miniature baseball bat. And I got a picture in my book. I'm in diapers with a ball cap and a glove and a little bat that my mother claimed that I used as a teething device. So I had no course but to love baseball.
His biography, Oh My, chronicles his life story, which begins in 1935, born in Michigan. At 5 years old, just before World War II, his family moved west to California for his father's job at a defense plant. They lived in Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, where good weather nurtured young Dick's love of sports year-round.
So it was baseball during baseball season and football and basketball, and all my dreams of being the great athlete someday, they were spawned there.
After the war, the Enbergs returned to Michigan to a farm. Their house had no indoor plumbing, but while working at their fruit stand, Dick always had his trusty radio by his side.
And it was a hard hit drive down the first base side. The Nelson.
And I would memorize the full lineups of all the major league teams. I taught myself to bat left-handed. There was an abundance on the farm of nice little size rocks, and I had an old bat, and I created a game where if I hit the rock over the highway, the little two-lane highway, that was a hit. If I didn't, it was an out. If I hit it over the telephone wires, then that would be an extra base hit. And if I really hit it over, then it'd be a home run. So I'd go left-handed, right-handed, left-handed until 3 outs. Then the other team would come up, and I would keep score. And I'd be calling the game, as many young people do. Swung on and missed, strike three. That's 3 in a row.
But while announcing might seem as if it were inevitable now, it actually evolved due to a detour early on. He wanted to be a professional athlete. Guiding along his journey were his parents, his mother, Belle.
She was a beautiful woman who loved people. If things went too well, she worried about that. She had to worry about something, and when things were bright and rosy, she worried that they were too bright and rosy with that kind of mom.
His voice and drive are from his father, Arnie.
He was a depression man, and he didn't want me to ever be satisfied because, as he reminded me, if you're so good, you think you're so good that you can't improve, you can only go one way, and that's back down.
Striving to improve and excel, to be an athlete was a matter of course, especially as a big star at a small Armada high school.
I was the pitcher on the baseball team, I was the captain of the basketball team, I was the quarterback of the football team.
He regrets he never lettered in varsity baseball, but still he worked to keep his dream alive, until reality hit him at Central Michigan University.
As a freshman, tried out for the baseball and football teams and realized very quickly that there were so many young guys much better, more talented than I, that I had to release that dream.
So what would he do next? A freshman speech class final exam was step one of finding his fate.
I realized, as nervous as I was, I could speak well on my feet, and did well, and invited to be on the debate squad.
Then a custodian job opening at a radio station paying $1 an hour led to step two and meeting the station manager.
He said, "You got a pretty nice voice, Enberg," and he threw me into a broadcast booth and gave me a 5-minute news summary and a couple of commercials and turned on a big old tape recorder and said, "Read." And I said, "Don't I get a chance to look it over first?" He says, No, radio, you read it cold. Let's see how you do." Well, I could read, and I left, and 3 weeks later got a call, came back. He said, "You have the job." I said, "Where's the broom closet?" He said, "No, we're going to hire you as our weekend disc jockey." And I thought, how much does that pay? $1 an hour.
Then, when the sports director unexpectedly left, Enberg was promoted.
Doing college football games, college basketball games, 2 high school football games, 2 or 3 or 4 basketball games.
His love of sports and teaching combined for graduate work at Indiana, where he won an audition for the newly formed Indiana Sports Network, doing Big Ten football and basketball.
And then when I took a college assistant professorship at Cal State Northridge, then San Fernando Valley State College, and the assistant baseball coach for 4 years, to supplement a poor teacher's income, I promoted myself around Los Angeles radio and television stations to do part-time summer relief work, vacation work, weekend work, and eventually that led to Gene Autry's station, KTLA.
Dick Enberg's assignments included Bruins basketball during the John Wooden era.
Great shooting at both ends, 81-79.
And he did the pre- and post-game shows for Angels baseball. And when the play-by-play announcer left for Kansas City, the station's and Angels owner, Gene Autry, wanted Dick Enberg to fill the spot.
I refused the job initially because I had UCLA, I had basketball, I had the Rams football, I had a nightly sports show. My plate was full, and I would have to give up all those things to be the baseball announcer. And they called me in, Mr. Autry and the head of the sports department and the station manager, and one of the questions they asked, Doug Finley was the gentleman's name, said, "Someday do you really want to be one of the great sportscasters?" I said, "Well, that's, of course, we all want to be somebody that would be recognized as being outstanding at our craft." He said, "Well, name me one announcer that you consider great that didn't do baseball." And, at the time you're talking about, Kurt Gowdy and Mel Allen and Red Barber and Vin Scully. And so he stumped me on that one.
They offered a 1-year trial period to see if he liked it.
Ground ball to the right side. Gritch is there. He's got it. Throws to first, and the ball game is over.
Even though I knew the game, I'd coached the game, I'd followed baseball, the relentless, rigorous nature of baseball, daily, with a bad team, it intensifies how awful those long road trips away from home can be. And then Don Drysdale joined our team, and the Enberg-Drysdale combination was a very happy one. He made my life so much more pleasant whether we won or lost.
The Angels lost a lot back then, but when they won, Enberg found a way to buoy the fans, narrating the lighting of the giant A with a halo on top.
I figured, well, when they do win, the final score is the Angels 5 and the Yankees 4, and the halo shines tonight, became a little goodbye calling card.
A highlight of his career, interviewing the man he idolized growing up, the splendid splinter, Ted Williams. Williams had become the manager for the Senators and was known for not liking to do interviews.
And I'm fearful that he'll just say, "Get out of here, I don't need you and I don't have time." So I go through the baseball register and I reread his autobiography, My Turn at Bat, and there it was, it jumped out. Ted Williams in 1940, 1941 pitched an inning and 2/3 against Detroit. The writers are all circling around, no one daring to come in and ask the first question. And I said, "Mr. Williams, I'm Dick Enberg. I'm the new announcer of the California Angels. It doesn't matter to you, I'm sure, but I idolized you. I tried to be like you." And he just looked away, like I'm over here. He's just watching his team tape practice, not even acknowledging I'm saying all this. And I said, "And I won't ask you one question about hitting. I want to ask you about the time you pitched against Detroit." He turned to me and he put his arm around me and he said, "Come here, meat." A baseball endearing term. And I must have asked him in a 10-minute interview 2 questions. He went through the whole process. And it did help me to stand out. Now, that's what preparation does. You can come up with a little nugget like that. And so from that time on, whenever I encountered Ted Williams, he'd pick me out of the crowd. He didn't know my name at first, but he always called me Meat. Hey, come over, how's it going? Things all right? Now, how beautiful is that? I mean, as a kid, you dream on a farm of being this great sports hero. And then the circle goes all the way around, and you become an announcer, and then he recognizes you. Beautiful.
Up next on One, a look at this legend's wall of memories, how he got back in the baseball game, and reflecting on 2 friends and icons, Jerry Coleman and Tony Gwynn. Dick Enberg has several national Emmys for his work as a writer, producer, and broadcaster, and is now being honored at the National Baseball Hall of Fame. But the road to that iconic career took a few turns, including back in the 70s. After a decade of announcing Angels games, he left that daily play-by-play routine to become a network jack of all trades.
When I signed on with NBC in '78, it was to be their basketball game of the week announcer and to work NFL football, and Merlin Olsen became my partner there. But in the back of my mind, I never gave up baseball.
Even though the lead baseball announcer at NBC, Curt Gowdy, was on his way toward retirement.
But I never wanted to feel like, as much as I wanted the job, that I was pushing this highly regarded, beautiful guy off his perch.
Still, assigned the 1982 World Series.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Busch Stadium. I'm Dick Enberg. I'll be joining Joe Garagiola and Tony Kovac for our play-by-play.
Dick Enberg thought he would become the network's lead baseball announcer the next year, until he got the word
that NBC had hired Vin Scully. And I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe, even though I full respect for Scully, he's the poet laureate, he's the best we have, but I thought it was going to be my job. So that kind of was another roadblock in baseball, but it sent me in another direction, to tennis, and tennis has been very, very good to me.
For nearly 3 decades, the man known for his signature "oh my" calls for great plays.
Three-pointer, yes, oh my!
Covered a wide spectrum, including the NFL and the Super Bowl.
Touchdown, Mark Jackson!
Golf.
Payne Stewart is the 1999 U.S. Open champion, oh my!
Then there was the Breeders' Cup, college football bowl games, and Wimbledon. He showed us some of his career memorabilia downstairs in his La Jolla home in 2004, when we first came to know his story for Channel 4 San Diego's program, Forefront. And Dick, you have a lot, look at this, Henry Kissinger.
We read somewhere where he said he always wanted to be, that was his fantasy. So our sportscasting group in New York got a jacket and put all the logos of the networks on it and made him an honorary sportscaster.
Let's not miss this one.
Oh, that's a unique one, yeah.
Bob Hope Classic with...
This is the second golf event that I did over at the Bob Hope Classic, and there's Mr. Hope, with 3 presidents. They'd never been paired before. So that's the unique picture that all 3 of those presidents would play in the same round, and I got each to autograph it. So that's a pretty special moment in my golfing life.
Wow. A wall of memories. Dick's experiences include being a game show host and appearances on late-night talk shows.
94, 93, oh my!
And he wrote a one-man theatrical play paying tribute to his late friend and broadcast partner,
Job opens up at Marquette.
basketball coach Al McGuire.
I didn't even know where Milwaukee was.
But his true heart and soul highlight, his wife Barbara. Dick had been divorced when he met Barbara, who was working for NBC and living in New York.
We were both assigned to a Cincinnati football game.
Against the Chargers.
Against the Chargers.
The playoff game, the minus 59-degree temperature. She was the
I was
production
a unit manager, production manager. And it was Dick's birthday, and the producer asked me to go and get a cake.
By the end of the evening,
I told him that my birthday was the day before. Mine's January 8th and his is January 9th. So for the first time, we had a discussion about just friends and family and celebrating birthdays, and as opposed to the meetings at 3 o'clock.
2 weeks and 2 dates later.
And I'm flying back to Los Angeles after being single for 8 years, thinking I'd never be married again, and I was writing poetry, and I said, uh-oh, this is the one.
Dick has 3 children from his first marriage. Then Dick and Barbara had 3 children, including Emily.
When we were on vacation, he wasn't working, and he always finds a way to start commentating something that we're doing at home. So if there's a ping pong match, and it's almost out, and goes into sportscaster mode very easily.
Their summer vacations were spent, in part, at Wimbledon.
And so we monitored their growth, the kids. Nicole is maybe, 2 months old?
Right, yeah.
2 months old, and Emily, 2 years later, she was 3 months old, and then Ted, and so we see them from little babies all the way through to young adults.
With Dick passing along life lessons through example.
His business is really competitive, and it's hard to not be changed maybe by the business, and I think he stays who he is, and he's not trying to be anyone else ever.
Part of who he is a baseball fan. By the time the San Diego Padres had new ownership in the late 90s, Dick Enberg recalls talking with owner John Moores about announcing the games.
How would it ever be possible to include baseball? It just seemed impossible. But there was a nice flirtation. It's still, it's like, the beautiful person walks by, you can still admire their assets, and baseball has always been that beautiful person. And so there were, maybe someday.
That someday became an option and a Padres invitation during 2009. But the professor had to face his own test to make a decision.
And the test included, would I be able to give up college basketball, something that was my entree to the network from UCLA basketball to NBC. That's the reason they hired me. And my love for academia and being on college campuses, and it's energizing to be with young people, and the excitement that goes with a college basketball game is something I've long enjoyed and treasured. And would I be willing to give that up?
And possibly NFL football and tennis.
Would I have to give up Wimbledon, event that I would rate among the very high moments of a sports broadcaster's life? The decision was made when I said, if all of the rest goes away, all the other sports go away, all the network assignments they say, no, we don't need you anymore, would you still want to be the Padre announcer? And when I could say yes to that, then I knew this is the right thing to do. Anything else will be frosting.
With his broadcasting experience spanning 6 decades, Dick Enberg says being 80 is just a number, not a requirement to retire.
I still feel I have my fastball, and I would hate to walk away feeling that I still am doing a proper and noble job at my craft. Now, when I feel like it's too tiring to go on road trips, or that my product isn't as good as it once was, then. But there's also a whole new world of internet where younger people who get on and tweet and text and all that want younger people to be the broadcasters. And I understand that's a natural cycle. But I'm going to fight it off as best I can.
When he took on the new job, he was,
oh my!
Excited, of course, but it had been some 25 years since he had called a baseball game, so the consummate professional and former professor had to do his homework.
The problem for me was I've been gone long enough that the only names that are familiar are the sons of the players that I called in the last generation.
To get up to speed, his research included Padres spring training.
I tried between my basketball assignments to race to Phoenix and spend 2 or 3 days, and did that on a few occasions, to get to meet players and let them know where I'm coming from and the kinds of questions that I would ask, and trying to dig some of those personal notes that would help all throughout the entire season.
And with Mark Grant, Dick Enberg, welcome everybody. Whether you're 9 or 90, whether you're bald or balding, opening day means so much.
But the first couple months of working the Padre broadcast, I was very uneasy.
Keeping him loose in the Channel 4 San Diego booth, former Major League pitcher Mark Grant.
Mark is my seeing eye dog. He leads me. I don't know how to get from the clubhouse to the press box to where they have the food, where you get the statistics. So he leads me around and makes sure that I'm comfortable with another new environment.
Well, you dubbed the Swat and Swipe in Peoria, Arizona, and it's taken fruition here in San Diego in 2010. Watching Dick Enberg all these years, what a pleasure it's been listening, being a sports fan, but now being able to sit next to him and call a game. Died and got a sportscaster's heaven.
The other illustrious colleague, Hall of Famer
Tony Gwynn is, here's the Mr. Padre. Here's one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, greatest hitters. And to be able to have access to his knowledge.
And he had to scramble to get back, and if Stanton had realized that, hey, I can throw the ball to first, he might have had a shot at him.
The veteran Dick Enberg made one call on his own: jackets and ties required.
A lot of kidding about how we dressed. I just think professionally that you ought to wear a shirt and tie, and it makes a statement to the audience that you came to do your work seriously today.
But returning to the game itself was not like the old saying about riding a bike.
Line drive left.
I knew I wasn't at my best. I was making some small errors.
Here comes the
that, are correctable, but I don't want to be in that position of having to correct myself.
6-4 Padre lead.
And I found the frustration was that while I hadn't forgotten how the game is played and the nuances and the wonderful subtleties about a perfectly executed double play, that I couldn't do what Ted Leitner can do, or Vin Scully, or the other announcers who say, that play reminds me of 3 years ago. Remember when so-and-so did that, and then they threw the beanball, and then we had the whole... I've been gone so long that my library's empty.
Along with his consistent routine visiting the clubhouse and talking with players and coaches down on the field, Dick Enberg rebuilt that library.
Each player is a book, each team is a book, each city is a book, and now you start to fill in your shelf. And in many ways you build your own encyclopedias.
Just as he put pen to paper writing memorable essays at Wimbledon and other national events, he has remained true to his passion for writing, contributing video vignettes.
And the house that Ruth built became the first supersized bowl yard.
The man, the great one, Clemente.
Roberto Clemente died in a plane crash at age 38. His teammate, pitcher Steve Blass, described the tragedy as a hero's death. A lot of athletes do wonderful things for others, but they don't die doing it.
In 2012, the Padres had a new TV partner, Fox Sports San Diego, and the team had some challenging seasons. But he hasn't had second thoughts about his move back to baseball.
The real test came when the Padres didn't do very well. And then the next day they didn't do very well. And the next day they lost. And you're driving home, and the games weren't good, and you just worked to try to make them as interesting as possible. And Mark Grant and I would get into humor or history or any tangent to try to distract the audience from the game not being very good and the Padres not winning. And on the way home feeling, it's just my integrity here. I'm doing the best I can. My journalistic integrity is being challenged. And the test was that when I awakened the next morning, I couldn't wait to get to the ballpark.
But with that love of the game came the loss of two friends in 2014. Jerry Coleman, fellow broadcaster since their Angel days, who passed unexpectedly, and Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn after a 5-year battle with cancer. What are your thoughts on having to say goodbye to those two icons?
Our heroes aren't supposed to die, and they certainly qualify in every way, especially Jerry on the hero side, being an American hero, not just a baseball star. I don't think the city will ever forget him. And Tony Gwynn, the fact he's Mr. Padre, that says it all. He'll always be Mr. Padre. Tony was a humble guy. He never wanted to talk that much about himself, but he loved talking about hitting. So he had to find that little crack in his armor that said, Tony, why would this happen? What did you do when that happened? What could a young person listening to this become a better hitter by doing this? And once you got opened that vault, you had the right key. Oh, the beautiful information that would emerge from Tony. It was a treat to be at his side in those telecasts. Yes. missed and missed desperately.
Now, Dick Enberg joins them in the beautiful and special Cooperstown, where the greats of the game and of the broadcast booth are honored.
I really felt that there were so many others more deserving that it was a shock as well that I should be selected because, hey, how do you ignore a Dizzy Dean or a Joe Nuxhall from Cincinnati? I mean, the list started with 35 or so, and they whittled it to 10, and I was fortunate to make the 10, in part because they decided this year to have some fan voting on the internet, and the fans, honestly, probably voted for me because they knew me for a lot of sports. I'm in the football and the basketball and then the Academic All-America Hall of Fame and in 2 college halls of fame and a high school Hall of Fame, Rose Bowl. I mean, there are a lot of honors that, whether I've earned them or not, my name is there on a plaque someplace. But this is the creme de la creme. And the reaction, Jane, has been so overwhelming from colleagues back at the network, from kids that I coached, that I played with in high school in a little farm town, to friends, family.
From that childhood picture to the radio at the fruit stand, Dick Enberg seemed meant to be around baseball.
He has hit 5 home runs, 10 runs batted in, and 7 doubles.
His own father's influence still very much alive.
I still am trying to please my father. I do a broadcast, and he's been gone 25 years, but I wonder what he would have thought of that, and I hope I was good enough for him.
It's safe to say, Dick Enberg, you are far more than good enough.
There you go. Got him. Fastball on the outside corner. And it's a home run! Double play and the ball game is over.
When Dick Enberg used to tell his college buddies he'd be a good baseball player, they now remind him they knew he only talked a good game. Indeed, Dick Enberg's unmistakable voice emerged in what the National Baseball Hall of Fame calls the living room era, the mid-50s to 80s, reflecting the rise of television. And now, as a broadcasting legend, it's taking him all the way to Cooperstown. I'm Jane Mitchell. Thank you for watching One on One.
For backstory content, visit 4sd.com.